If your riding lawnmower with a plastic or composite transaxle is making this noise, I was looking everywhere for a video on this of how to fill up a transaxle. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So the original problem was that the seals right in there had blown out. Actually, one of them had completely just fallen out. It was just literally sitting right in there. I went ahead and replaced both of these seals on each side. There are plenty of videos on that if you want to watch that online. So the first thing we're going to do is take out the battery, and you're going to want to use a 7/16 or 11 millimeter. They both should work. And just a note, if you tend to get a lot of battery acid buildup over on the positive connection, I do highly recommend a battery cleaner. You can certainly use any type. I've enjoyed using this. Spray it on there and go ahead and let it sit for a little bit and then just wipe it off. You might have to spray it a few times or scrape it with a wire brush. And that's already looking quite a bit better. At this point, you're going to want to take a flathead screwdriver and you're going to want to detach the pressure switch, which is right in here. You're going to want to get under there and then grab the other side. I can't do this with one hand. And then pull that off. And there we go. You can pull the battery out first if you'd like, but I find it's easier just to go ahead and pry both of these tabs, pull out the entire battery compartment, and let those cables slide through. Now that we have the battery out, let's take a look inside. As you can see, the first thing we're going to want to do is a little bit of cleanup because we do have decent chunks of grass in here. So I just want to get it cleaned up before we start drilling some holes. Let's bring a little compressed air in to clean out that grass. All right, now that we've pulled out enough material to make a small nest from, beyond getting the bulk of the grass, I realize it's not perfect, I went ahead and used a little WD-40, cleaned up these two high parts on the transaxle. I can get that focused. That is where we are going to be drilling our holes. Now let's just be clear, in this situation, there really are three options. The option that I'm doing, which is what I think most DIYers want to do, is to be able to fix the seals on their composite transaxle and then be able to fill it back up with grease so it's not making the horrendous noise like mine is, hearing all the gears moving inside. The second option is we could drop the transaxle and we could open the case up and we could do our refilling that way and repack it with grease. But that is a lot of work and we don't want to do that. And the third option is to buy a new mower. So obviously we're going to do this ourselves. So the plan is we are going to drill a hole in the high side of both sides of the transaxle. And then we're going to pump in this NLGI2 grease. Please note that some people would put transmission fluid in their transaxle. This is not a hydrostatic mower. This requires grease. Honestly, most red grease would do just fine in there. Apologize, everyone in the neighborhood decided to mow their lawn right now. Anyways, we'll push on. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use a countersinking bit. And you're gonna notice here, it's a little circle right there that you can use as your guide on the top of the transaxle. That's where we're gonna countersink first so that our drill bit goes in easily. Once you countersink it, you should have a nice little divot that looks like that. I'm using a 13/32 bit. Now we don't want to release a bunch of plastic shavings into the transmission. So in order to prevent that as much as we can, we're going to put some grease on the tip of this bit so that it'll hold some of those plastic shavings. So as you can see, it actually did a pretty good job holding those shavings out of there. So the next piece I'm curious about is how much grease is left in there since it's making a lot of noise. So we're gonna take our camera, our endoscope, and we're gonna go ahead and put it in there and see what we see. So looking inside there, what we're seeing is there's hardly any grease until it gets quite a bit lower. It's hard to see, I realize. What we're actually seeing at the top there is that's the part of the shaft that goes out to the axle. If I shine my trouble light just right over it, then I can see how much grease is in there. These should not be completely topped off. They need a little bit of room for heat expansion. They say to leave at least an inch up top. And roughly that's going to be about 30 ounces of grease. Each grease cartridge is 14 ounces roughly. So what I ended up doing here is on each side I drilled a hole. Now one thing to note is there is a moving piece right here on the outside of the transaxle. The same is true right here on this side. So that's why when you drill your hole, I was a little close in the center, but you probably, if anything, want to stay a little bit to this inside. You will be fine to drill through there, but just be cautious that there is a moving piece of a gear in here. So what I'm doing is I'm using my grease gun, and I'm actually just putting the grease fitting, holding it tight right on the end of there, and I'm pumping grease in on each side. I'm going to keep filling on both sides one at a time. It's a slow process, but it is getting there. I've just about emptied my first canister of grease, and I'll be moving on to my second. So now I am putting Permatex around these bolts. I just had these extra bolts in a bin, and they were just about the right size to fit in there, but I'll spread this around to create a gasket, let this sit overnight, and then everything should be sealed up. So just a note, I got 2 full cans of 14-ounce grease in there and kept shoving the grease down every once in a while with a screwdriver gently into the transaxle. I have put the bolts back in and made sure that they were not vibrating by pushing the mower back and forth, making sure that the gears that are in the outer part of the transaxle over here were not bumping into the screws or the bolts. So with that, I've got Permatex in there. I will leave that overnight. That will seal this up. And then in the future, these have a hex head on the top. I could pull them out, honestly, probably with a big pliers. So the point is we could service it again if we need to. Now, at the time, I still have some of this noise. The noise has gotten better, but my thought is I'm gonna have to let that grease heat up and work its way into the parts. And then I will show you tomorrow what that sounds like. So it's the next day. I just finished mowing the yard. Unfortunately, it just rained out. But anyways, let's go ahead and put this in neutral and take a listen. That sounds quite a bit better. That's about how it used to sound, besides those squeaks, which are from the fact that the mower is soaking wet right now. But anyways, I would say it's a success. Certainly let me know if you have any other questions or comments, and I will do my best to help. If this video was helpful, I'd encourage you to like and subscribe. I appreciate the support. And with that, I ask, what will you do with these 24 hours that you've been given?